Yeah, you did. I remember.
Nobody took me to task on that, and I think we need to describe and explain that right now. So, Bob, in that last phone call, Tristan had mentioned macroevolution. There are two types of evolution. There's macroevolution and microevolution. What's the difference?
And it was good to have a scientist-oriented person make the comment
right.
and discuss it with you. Macroevolution, of course, is big change, macro. And microevolution might be very small, imperceptible, perhaps slight changes, variations in colors and so forth, which I perceive as what referring to. Scientists have an illustration that they use, and I think it's a principle that was shown in terms of natural selection. In England, they used to have a certain kind of moth. It was a light-colored moth. It would land on buildings, and birds couldn't see them because the color of the moth and the color of the building was the same, and they survived. But as the industrial age began to develop, there was a great deal of soot that was put on the buildings. So white moths all of a sudden were targets on these buildings for birds that were hungry. The dark-colored moths, on the other hand, blended in beautifully with the background of sooty buildings and so forth. They supposedly came out on top, the survival of the fittest. Great, but it doesn't say that one moth became another moth, which would be, one moth became some other thing, like let's say a bat or a flying reptile of some kind. It was still a moth, and it has a different color. So micro changes, the apparent changes, these species that they keep on finding more and more of in places like, let's say, Brazil. One of my colleagues used to spend different years, summer times, out in different places, and he was out in the Brazilian outback, for lack of a better word, up the Amazon River somewhere, counting the numerous new species that were seemingly appearing. And yet they were still, I would perceive, one type or another type of insect, nevertheless perceived as a different species because it had not been seen before, and this is perceived as a mutation-type development in the micro level.
Okay, so micro is changes within a grouping. I don't want to use the word species because it seems to be used in a different way. So in other words... genotype. Okay, that's better. So a dog can evolve into another form of a dog, is what you're saying.
And to bring in the Bible, if we would refer to it as a dog kind, a Genesis dog kind, dog gets created. Dog gets all the DNA necessary to have all the variations possible. What gives us, let's say, a coyote or some other type of critter, all the different dog species are still dogs.
Okay, and actually that is brought out in the Genesis account. And before you reread that, what macro evolution you said was big changes?
Yeah, for example, the idea of the species of humans having come from some other primate, which would be quite clearly distinguishable and not related in a way that there could be, let's say, mutual reproduction and so forth.
So from a dog you could get a horse?
Or some other critter, yeah.
Okay, so micro is within the genotype. Macro is jumping from one to another over a long, long period of time.
And one of the reasons that scientists assume that there is a connection is because as you look at the embryology, there seems to be similar things. Tails
right.
and different parts of the embryos seem to be apparent in all these, and yet there's no real connection between the two. The biological structures are quite different. Okay,
let's look at microevolution. Is
that what you meant, by the way, microevolution? Aren't you going to commit yourself here?
No, that's what I'm committing myself to. That's what I meant by I believe in evolution. I think that microevolution not only is possible, probable, provable, but it's also scriptural. Jonathan, let's read Genesis chapter 1, verses 9 to 13.
And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the third day.
Now skip down to Genesis 1, 20 to 23.
And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moved, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day.
And then read verse 24 as well.
Okay, verse 24. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so.
There is a theme that runs through those creative day processes. And the theme is 3 words.
After its kind.
That's right. What is that all about?
Well, I think it's what we were speaking about earlier, that there are dog kind, there are horse kind, there are fish kind, and so forth. And they can, or they do have evidently a genetic makeup, which we believe the Creator put together, which allows them to give variations as they move through time. And these variations and the possible changes are not the result of some mutation, but rather are built into the genetic structure by the Creator.
So, and here, folks, right now, for the first time for this program, is where we are bridging between science and Scripture. And what we're looking at is saying, okay, science says, evolution specifically says there's 2 types of evolution, micro and macro. There is proof for microevolution in science. There is physical evidence, and it's pretty much everywhere. And the interesting thing to me is that the Scriptures are very, very clearly in line with what is scientifically been easily provable. When it comes to macroevolution, again, there is no physical proof or evidence of such things. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
And the fossil record, which we were mentioning earlier, leaves us with billions of brachiopods, billions of trilobites, and so forth in different levels. And of course, scientists also try to range the age of these, which is a very challenging thing also. And very often they look to the geologist, the biologists look to the geologist for information as to when this took place. Unfortunately, the geologists very often come back and say, well, it's because of what the biologists say. So we do have a little bit of a circuit here of reasoning. And in fact, in one area, there is evidence that an entire mountain range has the evidence upside down, that there is different arrangement of order of living things. Quite an amazing